Welcome back to another edition of Sling Paint Gaming. I am Berto. I'm alone tonight, and I was doing a bunch of different things, and I was answering a lot of questions that we get on the forums and on our community forums and also on our Facebook. And I was actually, somebody was asking, I asked a question on our Facebook, and it says, "Ask me anything, Berto," right? And long story short, so people started asking a bunch of weird questions, but a lot of some of the questions people were asking was like, how do I fly better? And also there was a thing that one of our good friends was just like in a funk, and he was losing a lot, and he kind of is like, I just need a break from X-Wing, and I just want to step away and kind of go from there. And so I decided to do this video on how do you get better at X-Wing, right? How do you, as the Carolina Crates would say, how do you get good, right? There's a lot of things to think about, right? And I can see everybody starting. This is a live feed, so I'm actually recording this live. I can see a couple different people are actually on. What's up, Jacob? Team SPG member. I see Seamus. What's up? I see Ernest. Hey, guys. All right, so the first thing I wanted to talk about, I'm looking at my list here of things that how I tried to get better myself. And if you guys remember, I was flying the Baby Blues, right? And the Baby Blues were all about me learning to fly. So the first thing right off the bat, before anything, was knowing your ships, all right? Now, the knowing your ships part, like, okay, that makes common sense. Like, I know my ships, but really know your ships. One of the problems when I first started playing was, I loved the game so much, so I started buying this ship, that ship, and started buying, Millennium Falcon, and then I bought Imperialist, and then I had Scum ships, and I was flying all these different lists, but I never got good at one particular list. I never understood how lists worked, and, long story short, it was just... It was one of the things that was just defeating because I kept on losing. So then I would see like a person play this list, and I'm like, oh, he just beat me with that list. Maybe I should take a picture of his list and put his list together and play that list. And then, of course, I would play that list, and I would lose. So, it was just getting defeated. And also, I was putting these weird lists together, thinking like, oh, I can mastermind and craft and try to, come up with the best list building techniques and put these weird combinations of ships together. I would put weird combinations of ships that had so many what I call handshaking lists. Those are the lists that like one ship requires these other two ships to sling 7 dice, or some other modifications or whatever the case may be, and then realizing that people would just target the other ships, and then my lonely ship would just stand alone, and they would just target the heck out of it and win the game. So that's why I started flying the Baby Blues. Everybody probably knows me because of those Baby Blues. And basically, it was just 4 T-70s with R2 astromech and integrated astromech. I just wanted to fly one ship it's got some survivability, some jousting power, some maneuverability, some green maneuvers to help with stress mechanics, with the R2 astromech, and then beefiness because with the integrated astromech, crit blocking. So I wanted to fly just one ship. I also flown also 4 Y-wings with TLT and just flown them. Right, those are slower moving ships. These are not, I would not say arc dodging type ships, but when you're pilot skill value 2, you're really not arc dodging anything. But they do have some repositioning ability, but you don't really have to do that when you're a pilot skill value of 2. But I even started flying 3 Y-wings. I even also started flying 3 Hounds back in the day when Hounds first came out. And the biggest thing was just learning your ships and then and what they can do, what they can't do. Do you want a formation fly? Do you not want a formation fly? And we have videos on list building and formation flying. You can definitely check out our strategy or our flight school section in our video channel. But one of the biggest things is know your ships. Know what your weaknesses and what your strengths are. Those are the most important thing that you can think about as far as your list. So like when I was flying the 4 T-70s, the Baby Blues, one of the things that I knew my weakness was they're all positive value 2, so they can arc dodge. So I had to get really good at blocking and anticipating what my opponent's going to do, right? And that kind of leads into the next portion on how do you get better is actually your opponent's ships. Know your opponent's ships. Now, There's so many ships in X-Wing today. I mean, there's tons of ships in X-Wing, and there's tons of pilots and different abilities, and they're always coming out with new stuff. And you're always like, you know, there's times I go to a tournament and like, Actually, it was Ryan. I was playing. I think it was learning. Ryan was playing a match, and he says, "Oh, I got Torkel Mux," and I'm like, "What does he do?" You know, because you can't. It's so hard to remember all the ships. But if you understand the strengths and weaknesses of ships and what features and what actions they have, you can understand kind of what an opponent's what strengths and weaknesses in their list is, and that's the biggest thing. Also, knowing their dial. Right? Or now you're allowed to have the dial reference cards in tournaments. They actually okayed that. And I usually take them with me. I actually have them. Oh, I don't have them readily. They're in my bag. But I actually print off the dial. If you go to our website, slingpaint.com, under the X-Wing reference, you'll see a link to the reference guides that are actually just, simple cards. Actually, you know what? We should make those as cards. That's not a bad idea. I'm going to make the reference cards and maybe give them away. And do, that's not a bad idea. I like that. So one of the things that it's just knowing your opponent's style. Now, if you don't know, you're not going to know every ship, but you can ask your opponent. It is things that you can ask them. Now, if you keep asking them what the dials and you keep asking what the look of the dial is, or keeping asking what the maneuvers are, they're going to get a little upset. But no, if you have a dial reference, you can kind of understand. Like I always talked about back in the day. I mean, just think about it. We're almost coming up on 2 years that Sling Paint has been around here. We always talked about Soontir Fel, right? And knowing that, okay, Soontir Fel, he's got all 2 speed maneuvers or green maneuvers, and he's all straight maneuvers or green maneuvers, right? So understanding the dial and understanding that with the build that they normally built on Soontir, I knew and understood what the mechanics were that what Soontir needed to do, because usually they push the limit, right? Because you get Soontir's ability with the stress and this and that gives them an extra focus and what have you. And then usually they would token up, right? And they would have to relieve the stress the next turn, right? So either you were doing a straight maneuver or some kind of 2-speed maneuver. Now, if you have a rock next to you on the right-hand side, they might go left, right? So understanding that and setting up for the block, knowing your opponent's ships is essential. Now, again, don't have to remember every single thing, but have the reference cards. Understand what the weaknesses are. Look at the mechanics of their list, all right? If you see a push the limit type of list, right? If you're anything with any PTL list, which you see nowadays here and there, not too much. Back in the day when Pal Bases was really strong, especially with Soontir, Jax, and Palpatine on the shuttle, you would have those guys would be outfitted with push the limit all the time. If you see a push the limit, you know that the next move they're going to try to relieve that stress and get out of the green, because they need their action economy to survive. Right, they need that evade token. They need that focus token to help dice manipulate to help survive, and also put firepower through when they're attacking. So keep that in mind of what the lists are. Now, some of the things that you're seeing today, right? You're seeing Atani Mindling type lists. You're seeing Fen Rao and 2 jump masters, 2 missile boats, or you see Paratani where you see Asajj Ventress and a Shadowcaster, Fen Rao, and a bump master of some sort. A jump master basically just there for blocking and bumping, right? And using a tiny mind link. So understand that a tiny mind link, stress mechanics. Understand that, if you do a green maneuver, they have to relieve the stress and then they get a free token for everything else. So understanding those mechanics of those lists, right? And understanding the weaknesses of those lists allow you to craft a list that could go against it, and also potentially block them or outsmart them. No, one of the biggest things and the best compliments I've ever gotten in an X-Wing match was the guy. I was playing. It was a regionals. Oh wow, it was almost about a year ago, and I was playing the Baby Blues, right? And I was playing. The guy had like a scum list, Craxy Fighters, or what have you, and he wanted to, it was kind of like jousting versus jousting type lists. And I was able to anticipate his moves because I knew his dial. I knew what the Caraxi Fighter dial was, and I think he had like 2 or 3 of them. And I was able to block him with my 1 ships that backed up all his other ships. So he lost all his action economy, and then I was able to fly my ships in first because they were low pile skill value, set up, and I was able to unload because I got my actions, and I was unable to unload holy hell on him. And he was saying, like, you outsmarted me. That is pretty much actually the game of X-Wing, is outsmarting your opponent. I mean, think about it. It's just like the game of chess. You're trying to anticipate what their move is going to be, right? And then setting up for that. Now, the other flip side of that is some people say, like, well, if they think I'm going to do this, I'm going to go do X. Now, do you try to block for every move? No, it's going to be really hard to do that. But set up for the most predictable move that they can do, right? Where it's not going to leave you vulnerable, right? So if you think that they're going to do this speed and you want to set up one ship, set your other ships behind it back. Or if you have a turreted ship, make sure the turreted ship flies around the outside. Make sure you give your space out, give yourself outs. That's probably another key about knowing your ships and your opponent's ships. Make sure you don't focus and try to cover every angle or every block on a person, because it's not going to set you up right, because you're going to block this guy over here, try to block him over here, try to block him over here, but you're not only going to have one ship in the back that's going to be able to shoot. So try to anticipate what I call the 80-20 rule. What do you think the 80-20 rules, what they're going to do in front of you? Try to block for it, but also, set up for anything that they're going to be potentially go around you or fly past you or whatever the case may be. Again, that's why I love this game, because I used to grow up playing chess with my grandfather, and I love that game, playing chess. And chess I was trying to outsmart my grandfather. Oh, I think he's going to do this, and I'm going to set up this. I'm going to move my rook over here and my bishop over there and set up for the castle and do all the fun stuff that, within chess. This game is very similar to that, is trying to smart your opponent. So knowing your opponent's, ships, or just at least understand their strengths and weaknesses and playing to them, right? Like when you're flying against Y-Wings. Well, Y-Wings, okay, when you see Y-Wings with TLT, what's the first thing you think about when a TLT Y-Wing? Well, it's got a range 1 donut hole, all right? So as long as you can get behind it and not outside of the arc, they're not going to have a shot. So the TLTs are useless, right? So keep that in mind. So try to anticipate what the dial is for a Y-Wing, which is really slow. Everything is pretty much red maneuvers, and then white maneuvers, only hard turns here and there. But try to anticipate that, right? And try to understand where they're going to be, and see if you can set up a range 1 shot. So if you're moving after them, try to anticipate, barrel rolling, or giving you some options, some action economy where you can, or position economy, I should say, and position yourself to get in that range 1 arc and light them up to holy hell. Same thing with large base ships. Same thing. Every ship has got weaknesses. That's what this whole game's about. It's about balance and pros and cons and different things like that. So keep that in mind. That's the most important thing that you can think about. Jim Harnock actually just posted, our good friend Jim. He said, Berto, also slow roll for a couple turns to see how your opponent starts out. I love that. I do that once or twice, depending on what my opponent's list is, right? If it's arc dodges and I'm seeing them with that, I might slow roll it up just to see where they're going to go. But then again, depending if it's like a big jousty ship and the rules of 12. I don't know if you guys know about the rules of not the rules of 12. Yeah, the overall board length, right? If you understand how far a ship can go and what your opponent's ship needs to do, or what you think their opening move is, you can set up a shot in the first round and get fire off onto your opponent before they even know it. Right, understanding how far. So sometimes slow your roll is great, and as most of the time it's probably what I do, especially if I'm flying low PS skill value ships. But if I'm setting up and like I see like a big old hound and sit in front of me, and I got 4 T-70s looking right at him, right, and even if he does a 1, right, which is his 1 is almost like a 2, so he's doing up. He moved up 3 spaces with the large base ship doing a 1, because the ship base of a large base is actually 2. Here's the ruler right there. There's a 2-speed maneuver. So if he's doing a 1 forward, he's actually doing 3. So he's going up all the way up here. Now, if I could position my T-70s, where I could do a 4 and a boost 1, yes, I'm not going to have any focus tokens, this and that, but I'm going to have shots on this ship the next range 1, and then I can position myself, talon rolls, whatever, for the next round to take out that hound as soon as possible. So there's pros and cons in thinking about that. Sometimes I might wait 1 turn. I might just do a 1 with all my ships, and then think about what he's going to do in his next turn, if he's going to slow roll or whatever the case would be, and then calculate the math where I'm going to get maximum distance, range 3, and get out of his his primary arc, where I can get some extra agility to help defense wise, but then lay into him with all my other ships. So again, there's pros and cons. Again, we're going to talk about practice and stuff like that, but every list you face requires a different approach, and always keep that in mind. All right. So we talked about knowing your own ships. We talked about knowing your opponent's ships. Again, strengths and weaknesses. The next biggest thing, if you want to get better, is flying. The number one question that everybody asks me is about, I want to get better at flying. That's why I flew the 4 T-70s, right? If you think about it, flying the 4 T-70s was allowing me to learn formation flying, but it also allowed me to understand what they call spatial awareness, all right? This is a term that's being tossed around a lot in the X-Wing world, but it's so relevant. And if you think about what spatial awareness is this, if you have a template like this, right, and you're going to do a one turn, right, and if you guys like seen these are actually from Litgo, all right? I use these to practice. Basically, they're all the turn maneuvers, 1 speed, 2 speed, so it gets 2 banked and 2 hard turns, same thing for the 1, same thing for the 3, and they also got this. Now, you can't use these in games, but when I'm practicing and putting my ships down, right, and just flying around, right, I use these to understand. A lot of people, the hardest thing to do is to understand when you do a 1 hard turn or a 1 bank turn, where does your ship end up? Right? And it's all different when you start playing large base ships, right? Because a 1 hard turn on a large base ship is a lot different than a 1 hard turn on a small base ship. Now, there's plenty of articles that talk about what the rules are, but here's a quick rule, just if you want to learn about hard base turns. This is really interesting. If you look at a hard 1, let's say, right? A hard 1 is almost a flip end on the corner. For small base ships, it's basically, it's a hard turn. You can actually fit a half a distance of your template maneuver. So what I call a half a template like this, or a half of a 1, right? A 1 speed maneuver. You can actually fit that in a corner. Now, if you match diagonal to diagonal, right, going straight like this, do that. This is what it's going to look like. That's how your ship ends out. Again, diagonal to diagonal. And it'll be a half a distance away if you do a 1-speed maneuver. Now, if you did a 2-speed maneuver, it's actually 1.5. If you did a 3 hard turn, it's 2.5, right? So basically, if you're doing, let's say, a 3 hard turn, all right, let me see if I can line this up. It's actually like this. All right, I don't know if you can see this or not, right? It is, if you're doing a 3 hard turn, your ship is going to end up right there. That's where you're going to end up with your ship, all right? And actually right about, if I do that, right about there. Again, diagonal to diagonal, and it's half, 1.5, 2.5. This is the little things that if you know where your base of your ship is, you can guesstimate, am I going to have enough room for that rock? Am I going to be before that rock, or past that rock? Now, bank turns are a little bit different. It goes usually... I'm still trying to perfect the simplest system to understand bank turns. Now, I've been playing this game long enough where I kind of understand where bank turns are going to end you. But there is a rule that I'm still trying to figure out, and it's mostly like a template and a half up, right? That's the whole thing, is a template and a half up. If you look at this, all right? A 1-speed maneuver, here's the 1 mark. It's just shy of the half of where your ship ends, right? And the center... wherever your nub is, right here, all right, is where your corner of your ship is going to be. So if you picture your ship 1.5 up and tilt it at a 45-degree angle, that helps with spatial awareness as well for bank turns. Now, I'm still trying to figure out the exact system that I can come up with that actually could help you with spatial awareness. But flying and spatial awareness is probably, I want to say, about 50 to 60% of this game is about flying. Because I don't know how many times I've, make or break where one game I'm playing in a tournament and I made a huge fatal error in my calculation and I caught I clipped the end of a rock and now I can't shoot, or I clipped a debris field and I'm stressed, and on top of it I lose my action as well. So think about flying. One of the things that you can do with flying is, I've done this numerous times between Vassal, which is the online version of this game, or you can actually sit with an actually 3x3 mat in front of you and just throw rocks down and debris down and try to guess what the maneuver you can do to wrap around rocks. That's spatial awareness, really understanding where you're going to be. And when you're flying formations, and we have the box formation and offset formation videos, understanding that when you're doing a bank turn, you're diamonding in on each other, right? Understanding that you need at least a half a base between ships, especially small base ships. Large base ships is a little bit different, but for small base ships, when you're doing a swarm, right, half a base is the perfect amount to be tight enough, but to give you enough firepower, focus firepower, but to give you enough room to make those bank turns and hard turns and reposition yourself all the way around. But spatial awareness and flying is probably essential. And flying, the other part about flying is also understanding, kind of like what we talked about your opponent's list, understanding where they're going to be. Looking at their list and saying like, oh, I'm going to look right there. I think, you know what, if he's going to do a 2-bank maneuver because that's the only viable move that he has, the other viable move he has is doing like a 4 straight. But I doubt how he's going to do that, because then he's going to lose, he's going to get me, being full frontal of my other ship. So he's probably going to do the 2-bank and then probably barrel roll out. If I put my ship right there to block him, right? And if you know your spatial awareness of your own ships, you can also guesstimate with fine-tune accuracy on where his ship's going to be, so you can at least set up for the block and let them lose their actions when you block them. So spatial awareness is huge. Take those rocks, take those debris, throw them on the board, try to fly your ships around it, then try to fly a formation around it. Take 4 ships or 3 ships and just try to fly it around. Set your dials like you would, right? You can set your dial for 1 dial for all 4 ships and try to fly a formation to rocks. If you've seen rocks that are usually a range ruler, 1 range ruler away, you can squeeze a formation through it. It's hard as hell, right? But you could potentially do it. And always remember, with flying, right, if you're trying to wrap around the rock or go past the rock, all you got to worry about is your template, where your template's going to be, right? And the starting position and the end position of your ship. So if the rock is right here and you think you can go past it doing a huge 3-bank, remember your template's going through that. A lot of people make that mistake and they know, like, what, I'm not going to be able to fit my ship. They think the whole ship's going to go through the template. No, it's where your template lies. So always keep that in mind. Again, practice with your templates. If you guys get the Litgo set, you can get them on Amazon. Litgo sells these. These are great because you can put these down in front of your ship on your board and kind of really see what it looks like if you did a 3-bank, if you did a 2-bank, right? And see what the best maneuver would have been. Do I have enough room to do the 3 hard turn, or should I do the 3-bank? Again, really practice. Jacob Lauer says, not just rocks, pennies, or other bases, or anything to practice. It's absolutely correct. Get as much things you can do to put on there. All right, so we talked about turns. We talked about spatial awareness, right? The other thing too that I actually wasn't going to talk about, but I'm gonna add it right now. I'm giving you guys some more stuff here. Is rocks and debris. Now, a lot of people ask about the strategy with rocks, the strategy with debris, right? I think everybody asks about that. What is your strategy? The biggest thing for me is no matter what you do, right, 9 times out of 10, you're never going to have the same exact rock strategy because you're playing different opponents, especially in a tournament, right? You can have a ballpark of an idea of a plan for your rocks and strategy, but it's never going to be exact, right? If you play, even let's say if you got initiative, you're going to place the first one every time. Your opponent can place it anywhere they want to be. Now, the big thing with rocks and debris is this. Now, if you want to use debris or if you want to use rocks, that is the decision, and probably based around your list, right? If you have a very heavy stress mechanic type ship, you might want to fly debris because you maybe don't care about them shooting, but you want to stress the crap out of them or let them make mistakes. Now, when you're playing better players, 9 times out of 10, debris fields are really not going to make a difference because they can fly around them. So keep that in mind. For newer players, that's going to be huge. But now rocks, though, if they catch a rock, right, or if you block them where they have to go over a rock or something to that effect, right, and if they land on the rock, the biggest thing, if they land on the rock, they don't get to shoot. So most of the time, I love taking 3 big-ass rocks. I don't care if I'm flying big, large-base ships, small-base ships, or what have you. I take 3 big-ass rocks, and I place them because I don't want to give my opponent a edge. I can fly. I'm very comfortable and confident in my flying ability that I can position myself where I want to be and leave myself open enough with big rocks, even with large-base ships. So I always like taking the 3 large rocks. That's my biggest thing. Find the 3 biggest rocks in your set between the Force Awakens set and the original core set, and use those bad boys. Trust yourself in flying and understand that you're going to fly decent. Now, if you're flying formations, right, the rule is like don't put big rocks. I still take the big rocks, but I'll put them in the corners. So that leads to the other part about rocks and strategy with them is where do you put them? Well, when you're flying something like formations and you're flying something like large base ships, you don't want them to be in your way as much, right? So always think about that. The other thing too is this: if you put them in the corner 2 and 2, right, you'll have enough room. You can have 2 ships on the side, 2 large base ships. You can have your swarm of small base ships on the side or in the middle. Basically, I think Jacob said it. He was saying basically try to create lanes. You can also, if you want to create lanes with your ships because you have a formation flying, then go for it, right? If you have a formation, right, and you want to, not mix around with the rocks, but give your opponent problems with the rocks, put your rocks towards your side. Think about this. So if your opponent's flying, right, and let's say you're flying coming from the bottom and they're coming from the top, right? If you put your rocks here on the bottom, you're past initial engagement. You're going past them, right? But your opponent, and if you slow it right, perfect enough, your opponent can actually, when they have to turn around, they got to deal with the rocks. So if you try to put all your rocks on your side, or you at least try to create a pattern of rock formations with your opponent, right? And then slow roll when you're first coming out, and then let them make sure that they have to engage and turn around through your rocks. That also helps you too. Now, the biggest things like with gunboats, like the big old, like a Saz Ventress and Shadowcaster. Gee, I was going to say Lancaster. Lancaster's a barbecue joint down the road here from us. If you have the big old gunboats, right, what they're going to do is they're going to be buzzards. They're going to be flying around, gunning in. Same thing with Y-Wings, right? Y-Wings going to want to lane up either up the middle. They usually like to start at the middle, and depending on where your opponent goes, they venture off either way. So, or they might fly on the outside and just keep circling around the outside, right? So keep that in mind when you're setting up your rocks. So if you're flying that, make sure that you have room to fly around. When you see formation flying, especially like a huge TIE swarm, I was playing at the first Crate Cup about a year ago, and the first Crate Cup actually had a guy who was flying, I think it was like 7 TIE fighters, and I was flying the Double Ghost Y combination. And I had the big rocks, and I basically put them down. And when he would put it down, I would put a rock right next to it, like a 1 range ruler away. And I created this cluster, right? And I said that, I got to make him go through that mess of rocks. So I kept, so when he set up his ships, I think he set up some of his ships on this side because he had like 1 Skill Valley pilots. I set up my big old ghosts on the opposite side. And I said, I'm going to fly down this side, and I'm going to make him and try to force him through the rocks because I want to break up his formation. And sure enough, that's what he did. He went through the formation. Now, he had like, I think 16 natural crits that he rolled with his dice. I did not win that game. But other times I played that, and with formations, you're trying to break them up, right? And I did break them up. He was going this way and that way, trying to break them up. So when he was trying to shoot my ships, he wasn't shooting all 7 of his ships at my ship. He was only shooting a couple here and there. And then I was just able to do what I do with my list and try to auto blaster him or take the big 4 dice roll primary weapon attack. So keep that in mind with rocks. The other thing with rocks too is this. Jump masters, okay? Jump masters are notorious for their sloop, all right? What they normally do is this. Let's say they set up here on the edge of the board here on the side, right? What they'll do is they normally come down. If you're not set up on the opposite side, and for some reason, let's say you got stuck and you're facing them face to face, right? I like, before I even set up my rocks, I take 2 of my 3 rocks and I put them. So let's say here's the board, right? Not in the middle, just a little bit lower than the middle, and maybe a little bit in, maybe like instead of 2, maybe 2.5 range ruler. I put both rocks right there on those sides because that prevents the jump masters from doing that sloop turn behind me, right? So they can't sloop behind me and allows me to reposition. So keep that in mind as well. It's like, use those rocks to your advantage. Like if you know the dial of your opponent and you know that they're going to, that the sloop is very powerful for them, right? Try to take away the sloop. Right? Also, maybe put the rock down here in the bottom. So you have 2 rocks here and you put your 3rd rock down here for sloops. Because when they try to turn around or reposition, right, it's going to be difficult for them because they can't S loop. They can't do that S loop, the notorious S loop that they have with them, and reposition. So keep that in mind. I mean, that's huge. Rock positioning is great, and keep trying different things. Try different rock placements, different things. If you see a swarm and you're flying arc dodges, again bunch those rocks up in the middle, and then set up on the opposite side and make your opponent engage through the rocks. Use that. So keep that in the back of your mind. All right. So that's kind of like, rocks, debris, and what I use and what have you. The biggest thing out of everything that you have to do is practice, practice, practice. Now, everyone's like, I've heard that before, this and that. It's the truth. Blake just took 23rd at Worlds. He got a 7-2 record. He made it to day 2, won both games in day 2, missed the top 16 cut by only 58 points, I think it was. So basically he got 23 out of the entire world, all the national champs. I think he played the UK national champ, defeated him. He played, I think, the French national champ, defeated him. But Blake is, in the last, I want to say, 6 months, what we called it the Blake World Tour, right? He would go through every shop. I think Monday was the only day that didn't have X-Wing. He would go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to one of our local shops that we had in our area and played X-Wing depending on what X-Wing night was. He played the same exact list over with minor variations here and there over and over and over and over and over again, and he took that same exact list to Worlds and he got 23rd overall. That's how you get better, and it's the same thing with my Baby Booze. I kept on playing it over and over and over again and kept getting better. The biggest thing is this. Now, some people that are getting into a funk, like there's times when Nims and I would play, right, and he would win like 10 straight games, right, and I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting angry and I'm like, but I kept on using a lot of the learning, I used each match as a learn, right, even though I failed at winning. Right, I took that failure and made it a learning opportunity and understood, like, I'm not going to do that mistake again. I'm going to make sure I do this or make sure I do that and watch out for this and watch out for that. You take each match as a win in heart because you are going to learn from that. If you can learn something from that, it makes you a better player. A lot of these guys, all the top players, they constantly play on Vassal, and when they go to their local stores, they're always playing, and they're constantly playing a lot of lists. And that goes back to all the different things I told you about. So as far as knowing your ships, so they keep on playing the same list. As far as knowing your opponent's ships, playing different people on different lists. Now, if you have a local shop and you're playing 4 guys and you're playing the same 4 guys all the time, every Thursday night, guess what? You're only going to know those 4 guys. Venture off and try to actually go to a tournament, right, and play other people. Even if you do horrible at the tournament. We actually had 2 new guys. We just had a store tournament here that was local at Parker Bannock, Kenton Wayne about 2 weeks ago. Yeah, about 2 weeks ago. And I was playing it. I was recording videos. I was actually giving myself a break with the videos and recording, and I was playing some Triple K wings. But we had a guy and his son playing. Now, I played them before, and I was helping them, teach them about the game and how to play the game and different strategies. And I told him, I said, come to the tournament, right? Come play in the tournament, right? He goes, but we're going to lose, and, I don't want to, yeah, but I said, that's the best experience that you're going to get. You're going to play some of the best players in the Charlotte area, right? And you're going to learn from them. Right, you're going to learn what not to do, what to do, and then you're going to learn different techniques and mechanics. You're going to learn like what not to do, or like the one time I actually played one of them, played the father, and I had the K wings, right, and he had an aces list. I think he had like quick draw. I think it's like my new nemesis is quick draw. No longer soon to your fill. It's going to be quick draw. He was playing quick draw, and I was able to light him up with my K-Wings, but, he totally forgot about the advanced slam. Again, he's a newer player, so I was showing him the advanced slam. He's like, oh. And that gets back to knowing what your opponent's is and asking the questions. If you're a new player, ask questions. If you don't understand what the advanced slam is, ask. A lot of players will help you with that. You can tell them, hey, I'm a new player. This is my first tournament. Just learning, and they'll teach you. They'll show you this and that. But that's the key thing is practice, and then play other people. I mean, that's probably the biggest thing that I can tell anybody is play other people. Because if you don't play other people, you're going to get stuck, with just at the same level as your friends that you're playing at. So just keep that in mind. All right. So that we're going to wrap it up. I see you guys a lot of talking back and forth here. We're going to wrap up this video. But this was just help to get you guys a better player. How do you guys keep playing? I mean, there's no secrets to it. I mean, it's like anything you do. The more you play, the more you get better. They always say, I think it was like 10,000 hours makes you a master at something, right? And when you think about 10,000 hours, like, holy crap, that is a lot of hours. But if you actually break that down, that's a couple years. I think it's like 2 years end to end, right? It's 20, and then, but if you did, let's say, several hours a day, that could be 10 years. If you did a couple hours every week, that could be, 3 or 4 years. But the more you play, the better you get. Okay, and I guarantee you that the more you play, and then you also start learning strategies. You also start learning when you see this list, this is what I got to do against it. When I see this list, this is what I got to do against this list. Again, weakness and strengths. It's like I always say it's like paper. It's rock paper scissors, right? Rock paper scissors, right? You're carrying the paper, right? Your weakness, right, is the scissor, right? But for the rock, you're gonna beat the rock every time, right? But your weakness against the scissor. See how you can figure out how to get away from that scissor, and that's the key thing. And how do you understand what the scissor strengths are and how to beat it? So that's the key thing to think about. All right, so we're gonna wrap this video up. If you guys like this, definitely give it a like below. Subscribe to the channel. Again, this was recorded live. Also, if you guys want to help us out, definitely take a look at our token stores down below. We sell a lot of different X-Wing tokens, different things. Also, take a look at Team SPG. We started giving out as a thank you because Team SPG supports us in most what we do. So one of the things we started doing was we started making some alt art cards just to give away as a thank you, right? But we got a Harrison Dula right here. It was just given away. This was actually Blake's gift to everybody to help sending them to Worlds. I got a couple other cards in here. Every month we give out a thank you to all our Team SPG members, and that helps supports us. So definitely check out the links for Team SPG, and also check out our website, our community. That's where you can join up the community. Is Team SPG right there on our slingpaint.com. Check out the Team SPG link. Also check out our community forums and what have you. If you guys have any questions, definitely leave it in the comments below. Or if you guys got tips and tricks onto how to make other people better or what made you better, definitely leave it in the comments below, because at the end of the day, we got to help everybody, because the better players that we have out there, the better we get, the better we do. All right, guys, and always remember, when you have more paint, when you sling more paint than your opponent does, you're probably gonna win. Thanks, guys. Have a good day. It's not shutting off.